Okay, I'm just going to give it like a minute. I'll just wait for a few people to get on. I always say this, but much gratitude for people who are taking time out of their day to listen to me speak. Whilst I'm waiting for a few more people to jump on, I might have a snack, but I actually don't snack. Yeah, so it's actually going to be something that I'm actually going to talk about, and I'm going to start to break it down. Like, just so you guys understand, I'm not a big advocate of snacking. And look, I know in the fitness realms, it's a question I get asked all the time by clients, like, what can I snack on? The one thing I'd say, like, my response to this question is, well, let's analyze why you feel you have to snack. It's probably the most important question. Not me go, well, you can have like a handful of macadamia nuts, you can have a couple of bits of fruits. Like I'm not gonna advocate something that potentially is actually gonna make their problems worse. Yeah, okay? And I'm gonna dive into this a little bit more, okay? But I really like to answer the question of what is making you want to snack, yeah, okay? And so one possibility is that you don't actually eat enough to make you feel fulfilled, yeah, okay? And so I'm going to get into that a little bit more, okay? Another aspect might be that you actually have gastrointestinal problems that are leading you to snack. That's another aspect that I'm actually going to talk about, yeah? And then the problem is, if you are snacking, then you're actually contributing to the cause of your gastrointestinal problems, okay? So these are the things that I'm going to break down. And there's also the misinformation that we're sort of spoon-fed, where, like eating 6 meals a day, okay, this is going to help regulate your blood glucose levels, okay? Like, just to understand that it could actually dysregulate your blood glucose levels, actually eating on a more frequent basis as well, yeah, okay? And more to the point, like, you got to understand, you're just putting an enormous amount of stress on your gastrointestinal system. Like, when are you giving it a respite if you're eating 6 meals a day? Okay, and I want to reassure people, like, this is the stuff that I used to spoon feed people as well. Yeah, okay, and I started to scratch my head, and I just go, this stuff doesn't work. Yeah, okay. So, and I'm not really fixing a lot of these, the individual's health issues. Yeah, okay. So let's dive into the snacking aspect, yeah, okay? So once again, I want to make it clear, I do not advocate snacking with clients and people that I deal with, yeah, okay? So one aspect of snacking, yeah, okay, is you actually may have issues in the gastrointestinal lining, okay, where you've actually damaged particular cells, okay? So remember, like, I always talk about the mucosal cells, I always talk about the gastrointestinal lining. Okay, you got a particular type of cell within your gastrointestinal tract. They're actually called enteroendocrine cells. Okay, and so the responsibility of these cells is to produce gut hormones. Okay, and so there's all these different types of gut hormones. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, but one type of gut hormone that's actually released from these enteroendocrine cells, okay, is glucagon-like peptide 1. Don't worry, I'm not going to test people at the end of this, yeah, okay? And glucagon-like peptide 1, you actually produce within the small intestine, the large intestine. And I actually just want to look at some of the roles, okay? Because if you actually look at a lot of the gut hormones, they basically actually help with regulation of blood glucose levels, okay? And how do they actually do that? Because most of the time, they're controlling things like transit time. Okay, and so that might be transit time of the release of the contents from the stomach into the small intestine. Okay, they actually help with the release of insulin. So they all govern a huge aspect of regulating blood glucose levels. And you can start to understand why, once you actually damage the gastrointestinal lining, okay, that you can just get terrible blood sugar management dysregulation. Yeah, okay. But glucagon-like peptide 1, interesting enough, okay, you've actually got receptors on your adipocytes or your adipose cells. I'm talking about fat cells here. Okay, so it's really, really important that we understand that there's so many different factors that play on your adipocytes, okay, and will dictate your ability to essentially get lean, yeah, okay? But if I've actually damaged like the small intestine, large intestine, now what factor would I be talking about in this instance? Well, something like intestinal permeability. And once again, there's so many different realms and so many different forms of intestinal permeability. It's not just the traditional hyperpermeability, okay? So this can cause issues with these enteroendocrine cells, and it can cause issues with the glucagon-like peptide 1. Now, if the role of this particular gut hormone is to actually help with the release of insulin, okay, now, and actually help with the dictating transit time of food, yeah, okay. Now, if you've got low levels of this particular gut hormone, okay, well, that's causing dysregulation with the insulin, okay, and also it's affecting transit time of the contents of the food from the stomach to the small intestine, okay, which means essentially it's a little bit more rapid, okay. And so what do you think that's essentially going to do to your blood glucose levels? It's going to raise your blood glucose levels, and if your blood glucose levels are raising, they're going to drop really quick. All right, so once again, let's use some logic here. If the blood glucose levels are dropping, and they're dropping really quickly, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to snack, okay? And so the snacking may actually be a sign of the damage that you actually have to the epithelium or the mucosal cells, okay? And so I'm looking at it and go, well, potentially the reason this person wants to snack is because of the damage that actually exists within these cells, okay? So that's one factor. And how would I fix that? Well, I'd essentially put someone through a gut repair, okay? There's many different stages to that, okay? There's many different, compounds that I use to actually help with that healing process. There's certain micronutrients that you can sort of start straight away to help with that. And, things like bone broths and slow cooked meats and things like P5P, which is pyridoxal 5-phosphate, B6, zinc, okay? I'm not going to go too much into the realms of epithelium and so forth, but there's things that you can start to help with those gut hormones, okay? Another factor is the MMC, okay? Anyone who knows me, I talk about this regularly, okay? And I can actually pick up if you've got issues with the MMC. So for people who don't know, this is the migrating motor complex, okay? And the migrating motor complex is the ability for the gastrointestinal tract to sweep the contents of the duodenum or the small intestine clean. This is really, really important, okay? And essentially, it's sweeping like the debris. It's a little bit like a street sweeper, okay? And it's sweeping the debris, and it's sweeping it from the small intestine to the large intestine, okay? So basically into the colon, okay, where you've got like 400 different species of bacteria. This is where the higher rate of fermentation is meant to be taking place in your gastrointestinal tract, okay? Because basically this indigestible matter or this debris is basically food for the microbiome, and then they feed on that indigestible matter and they produce the short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids is live for another time, yeah, okay? But basically this migrating motor complex, before I get into a little bit of the technicalities, because obviously I do like people to understand really what's going on internally in their body, okay? But one thing I want you to understand, like, imagine when you get like groaning in your stomach, okay? And so I'm not talking about like gurgling and like, that grumbling, yeah, okay? And I'm just talking about that groaning that you get, okay? Because when it's gurgling, most of the time that's like fermentation issues. So you'd probably point the finger at things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, some sort of like complication from a bacterial issue, and the foods, and things like intestinal permeability and so forth, just not getting broken down. You're struggling to release the enzymes to break it down. So I'm not talking about that. So don't confuse it, yeah, okay? But I remember when I was a little kid, yeah, okay, basically, your stomach would groan, yeah, okay? And your parents, yeah, okay, who my parents weren't really, they didn't really have a good understanding. Like, I love my parents to death, yeah, okay? They're amazing people, okay? But their understanding of nutrition wasn't fantastic, okay? So, and I don't blame them for that, yeah, okay? They were just doing the best job they could with the tools they had available at the time. But they basically told me, well, if your stomach's groaning, yeah, okay, then you need to eat, yeah, okay? And basically, I took that information and took it as gospel, yeah, okay? But actually, when your stomach is groaning, yeah, okay, it's actually a sign that the MMC is actually kicking into gear, yeah, okay? And there's three major components that make up your MMC, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, yeah, okay? And if it's kicking into gear, that basically means the street sweeper is in action, okay? Now, you think about it. If I then just eat food, okay, basically you can turn the keys in the street sweeper, you can turn that off, okay? The sweeping's not going to happen because now the priority is for me to break down food. Okay, that's what the priority. So basically, the MMC is not kicking in. Yeah, okay. This is so important. This process of the MMC. So if you imagine if I'm eating like 6 times a day, yeah, okay. How do you think that's going to go for the MMC? Because if we look at time frames, and this can be completely different from person to person. Okay, you know, it depends on your ability to metabolize. Yeah, okay. This can depend on the type of damage you have in the gastrointestinal lining. If anyone wonders why I'm zigzagging here, because I'm talking to Facebook Live and I'm talking to Instagram. Okay, so there's many different aspects that could dictate the time that it takes for your MMC to actually kick in. Yeah, okay, we're not all the same. I know people like to think we are, but we're not. Yeah, okay, and that can be anywhere from 90 minutes to 2:30. So it's quite diverse. Yeah, okay, and I generally say it's probably going to be around about the 2.5 hour mark. Yeah, okay. Now, if I'm just eating like every 2 hours, yeah, okay, or even every 3 hours, am I really allowing that MMC to kick in? Okay, and people might think this is not a big deal, but it is a big deal because you're just not resting the gastrointestinal lining, and you actually can make yourself more prone to bacterial overgrowth. Okay, especially opportunistic bacteria that can set up shop in the small intestine. So things like SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth, yeah, okay, and things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That could be negative gram bacteria, whatever that ratio is. Okay, so that's why you got to take this serious. Give your gastrointestinal lining a bit a bit of a break. Yeah, okay. So there's these three major aspects that actually help with the MMC. Okay. Well, one is enteric hormones. So I've already talked about the enteroendocrine cells, okay? And one of the key hormones is motilin, yeah, okay? And motilin, guess what? That actually kicks in. So I'm talking about the enteric nervous system. So I'm talking about the gut to brain axis. So really what's going on, this communication between your gut and your brain is really, really important to kickstart the process of the MMC. What happens if I've actually got damage to the enteric nervous system and the vagus nerve? And I'm telling you, that's a common occurrence for a lot of people. Because of why? Because things like childhood trauma, emotional trauma, okay, a lot of negative emotions, that's going to be rampant at the moment, yeah, okay? And so the role of motilin, so motilin really kicks in, okay, produced within the stomach, yeah, okay? Motilin really kicks in during periods of starvation. Well, if I'm eating every 2-3 hours, do you think that's periods of starvation? Okay, so that's really good for kicking in the MMC. Then you've got bicarbonate. Okay, bicarbonate, just so you know, is really dependent on your energy system. So you got your sedentary, you got poor energy system, shallow breather. Good luck with bicarbonate. Okay, because carbon dioxide is most present in the body in the form of bicarbonate, and bicarbonate, which is also your pancreas plays a big role here. Okay, but the bicarbonate is released up into the stomach, where it actually helps to restore the pH balance in the stomach, but it also helps to nullify the acidity of the food coming into the small intestine, okay? So bicarbonate is really important in this instance, yeah, okay? But once again, you got issues with carbon dioxide, shallow breather, highly stressed, okay? And you can see how negative, stress can be in this realms, impacting the enteric nervous system, also bicarbonate, okay? And then the other one is bile, okay? And to be honest, it's I see this quite frequently because people are having issues with things like really elevated total bilirubin, which can be a reflection of complications with bile, yeah, okay? And the role of bile comes through the enterocytes in the duodenum, the small intestine, okay? And you get things like bile salts, yeah, okay? And obviously what's really important, like the precursor for bile is cholesterol. I'm not going to get into a discussion about that at the moment, okay? But then the bile is released into the small intestine, and the bile salts, and they help with the emulsification of fats. But bile salts, really interesting, it's antimicrobial, okay? So when bile salts get into the small intestine, they actually help to get rid of any opportunistic secondary infections that may be setting up shop in your small intestine. Now let's think about it, like, stress can have such a detrimental harm here, okay? But this is the three things that I need to kick in for the MMC, okay? And so if I'm eating constantly, okay, well then that means I'm not really sweeping this debris, okay? And that means it's sitting there and it's fermenting and it's encouraging things like SIBO. That's extremely common gut motility issue, okay? And then you're going to get all the complications associated with SIBO, which I'm not going to get into, okay? But basically, because you're not releasing enough of the bile salts to actually help with that antimicrobial aspect, okay? And you're not sweeping that food into the large intestine, okay? Which means it's going to sit there and ferment, okay? And so you're encouraging a bacterial issue, okay? So what I basically say to people, okay, let the MMC kick in, okay? And that's why I like to give people spacing between their meals to actually help with this process, so they're not going to get motility issues and they're not going to get bacterial issues like SIBO, okay? And we've got to ask ourselves, have we been encouraging these types of problems with this whole thing of like, eating small meals like 6 times a day, okay? Like the real area that this is having a negative impact on is the gut, okay? The gut is the real loser in this process, okay? So just so you guys know, just a bit of a template, okay? If it's 90 to 230, like most of the time, I'm going to go at least 4 to 5 hours, okay? And that's why even things like fasting, okay? And fasting is a discussion for another time. Like, people might know my views when it comes to fasting. It just totally depends on the individual, totally depends on the person. I'm not anti-intermittent fasting. I'm not anti-long, like water fast, whatever that might be, 5-2 method, 6-1. It just, for me, it just depends on the individual, okay? So, that's why things like fasting are great for the MMC, okay? They're great for modeling, okay? And they're actually great for the mucosa, which is like the connective tissue underlying the epithelium, which is really good when it comes to your immune system, okay? So the other factor that I want to talk about, okay? So have some spacing, guys. Have some spacing, like 4 to 5 hours, okay? And actually the reason that I like to actually have, like, maybe go for like 4 meals, okay? Because most of the time, from my experience, okay, a lot of the people I initially deal with, they're just malnourished, okay? And I can go into the whole realms of where a lot of the complications can occur from severe calorie deficits. I'm not anti this, and yes, I don't want to get into the debate of course, if you drop yourself into a deficit, okay, and you're moving more, okay, there's high frequency of blood flow and vasodilation and movement. Of course, you're going to drop, you're going to drop fat. Like, I'm not even getting into that debate. That's how it should work, okay? That's how it should work, okay? But for a lot of people, they've got down-regulated metabolism because they've dropped their calories too low for too long a time frame, okay? And the problem is this can cause like a negative feedback loop to the brain, where it causes dysregulation with particular thyroid hormones, thyrotropion releasing hormone, TSH, that actually affects that connective tissue that I was talking about in the gut lining. And it affects that connective tissue in the gut line, you affect your immune system. Okay, so people just need to understand, like, I'm not anti these things, but just understand we're meant to go through periods of yes famine, but also periods of of feasting as well. Okay, that's the big thing that I want to get across. Okay, and the other thing is that a lot of the people that I'm dealing with, because they've been going through starvation for such a long period of time, doing a lot of things like intermittent fasting, not necessarily doing that with great structure, but they were already malnourished in the first place. And a lot of the people that I deal with, because they've got things like intestinal permeability and they've got gut lining issues, the actual base metabolic rate is actually higher. Once again, that's a conversation for another time, yeah, okay? But a lot of people find that really hard to understand, but it's because they don't absorb, they don't assimilate food properly. Okay, that's why their actual base metabolic rate, and that's why I calculate base metabolic rate very differently to the, catch Mercado and the traditional forms, yeah, okay? Like I'm taking brain, I'm taking stress, I'm taking what's going on in your gut lining. That's going to allow me to understand where your base metabolic rate is in that present time. And that's what I need to understand. It doesn't mean it is what it should be, because I want to get it to where it should be, okay, by correcting some of those other underlying issues that are throwing out that base metabolic rate, okay? But a lot of people are just, they're calling on metabolic processes, okay? And one of those metabolic pathways, one of those metabolic processes they're calling on is gluconeogenesis, okay? And that's a metabolic pathway we have. You don't need to worry about the terminology so much, okay? But it's a particular pathway that we have evolved over evolution to basically deal with periods of starvation. It's completely normal, okay? And essentially in this instance, you're calling on cortisol to regulate your blood glucose, okay? Is that a bad thing? It's normal. It becomes a bad thing if you're doing it all the time because you're just deliberately doing it, okay? And not because there's actually, you can't find food, yeah, okay? And so basically what cortisol does is actually takes from your amino acid pool, your nitrogen pool, and it's going to take glycogenic amino acids. And what I mean by this is amino acids that you can use to raise your blood glucose levels, okay? And the two preferred ones tend to be glutamine, which, interesting enough, is a substrate for your immune system, okay? And you actually need it for your epithelium. You need it for your mucosal cells. And the other one is alanine, yeah, okay? And alanine I need for the Krebs cycle, and I need it for my ability to metabolize B vitamins. My point being here is you're actually taking amino acids that I need for other functions in the body, but the body's going to go, one of the priorities is to basically raise blood glucose, yeah, okay? Because we need energy here, yeah, okay? And so it's basically going to rob you of key amino acids that you need. In that moment in time, I'm saying that's okay. It's normal, and if it's only happening now and then, it's not a big deal. But if you're calling on gluconeogenesis on a frequent basis, okay, this becomes a problem, yeah, okay. And also, what can happen is like your blood glucose levels raise and then they drop, yeah, okay, and they're dropping quite rapidly. You're going to go for the lowest common denominator, okay. And I see this in people all the time. The lowest common denominator, just going to go for anything that makes you feel more energized, okay, whether that's an energy drink, whether that's sugar, whether that's coffee, alcohol, yeah, okay. And I'm going to see it, and that's actually because the person's not really regulating their blood glucose, okay, and they're just going long periods without eating on a just too regular basis, yeah, okay. Now, if we actually look at it, after you train, your blood glucose levels are going to drop about 1 to 2 hours after training, yeah, okay. Now, when you're relaxed, yeah, okay, so let's say you're just doing, a lot of things that help with the parasympathetic nervous system. There's a lot of meditation, yoga, yeah, okay. It takes about 16 hours for your blood glucose levels to drop. It's a huge, you can see the discrepancy here, okay. It's huge, yeah, okay. Now, let's weigh it up. Under stress, okay, when I'm running around like a headless chook, okay, I've got to look after my family, I'm training really hard, I'm doing a 10-hour day, I'm hardly sleeping. Is it going to be closer to the 1 to 2 hours, or is it going to be closer to the 16 hours? Well, it's nowhere near going to be close to the 16 hours. It's going to be closer to the 1 to 2, and your blood glucose could actually start to drop at about 4 to 5 hours, okay? And so hence why I go a 4-hour gap when I'm trying to rebuild someone. So I might go like 7 a.m. breakfast, 11 a.m. I'm just using that as an example, guys, okay? Then 3 p.m. and then 7 p.m., okay? Because it allows me to sort of get under that realms, because gluconeogenesis sort of kicks in around about the 5-hour mark under stress, yeah, okay? And I don't want this individual to take more from their body, okay? This is why initially, and this is not the long-term solution, yeah, okay? And most of the time what I'm doing with people, people ask me about like calorie restriction and so forth, and my preferred technique to apply calorie restriction, okay, is if the person's training hard, to support the training with food, Yeah, okay. And then when it comes to the calorie restriction outside of their training days, I'll use fasting. Okay, because maybe if I'm using something like 2 15-hour fasts, they might have, calories in the realms of about 750 calories. The most important thing is when it comes to the amount of calories is what your average calories is over the week. Okay, not necessarily just dropping your calories really low, 1100, 1200 calories, whatever that might be, and then pushing your energy expenditure through the roof and actually causing detrimental harm to your thyroid and your sex hormones and ultimately your gut lining. And now you're stuck with the gut lining issue, even when you raise your calories up. Yeah, okay. You're still stuck with the gut issue. I just see people, that might help with the regulation of the thyroid, but now you're stuck with a gut issue that's causing all these other problems. Yeah, okay. And so that's why I go for this sort of 4-hour gap, because one, I'm helping with that gluconeogenesis aspect and helping to regulate the blood glucose. That's not the long-term solution for the rest of your life. Yeah, okay. And the other factor is that I'm helping with the MMC. And if I'm helping with the MMC, cleaning that small intestine nice and clean, and also make sure that you're not proliferating opportunistic bacteria that's basically going to basically feed on the food that is sitting there and fermenting. So that is my thoughts on like snacking, yeah, okay, and also to do with meal frequency. And I might like touch a little bit more when it comes to macronutrient breakdown and so forth. There were actually a few questions. I'll try and answer a couple. Yeah, okay. Actually, these were pre-questions. I'm sure there might be a few more questions in there, but I'm just going to answer these ones. Can we eat only 3 to 4 times a day and get results? Okay. Well, hopefully what I've just said actually answers that. Yeah, okay. Because what we need to understand, yeah, okay, like your gut hormones, yeah, okay, you have receptors on your fat cells for gut hormones. Okay, you have receptors for pro-inflammatory proteins on your fat cells. Yeah, okay. Now, when it actually comes to because it comes down to your ability to efficiently assimilate and break down the food that you're consuming. Yeah, okay. Now, if I'm eating on a regular basis and I'm actually affecting, like food sitting there and fermenting, okay, how do you think that's going to go when it actually comes to regulating anabolic hormones that actually help with fat burning? Okay, so things like testosterone and so forth. Like once again, you don't have the Oompa Loompa factory sitting in your body just producing the testosterone. It's actually got to come from your ability to assimilate, things like dietary cholesterol, and that's coming down to what's going on in your gut. And if your gut has like fermentation issues and it's struggling to emulsify fats and so forth, well, you think that's going to affect, fat burning hormones? Okay, so yeah, once again, I just think, it's quite prehistoric, a lot of the formulas that we've used. And would I say that these formulas of eating 6 meals a day and so forth has resulted in really good gastrointestinal health? Like, no way. Yeah, okay? Gastrointestinal health is nosedive. Yeah, okay? That's one thing that I can tell you for sure, okay? I actually got a question here, okay? Tips for night shifts, okay? Try to keep meals, same time. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, okay? Shift workers is the hardest, yeah, okay? Trying to regulate circadian rhythms, okay? Because the one thing is, if you're not really regulating circadian rhythms, and so it can have such a negative effect on things like your blood glucose, yeah, okay? Like all these different like types of sleep, yeah, okay? Like, frequent wake ups in the night that causes dysregulation of blood glucose. Okay, and so this is where it gets really tricky with shift workers. I mean, what I would more likely do with shift workers is really try to improve when they do sleep. Okay, so yes, you can still go on the timings that I'm talking about with the meal frequency and so forth. Okay, but I'd be really looking at how do I get them into a deeper night's sleep. Okay, and so yes, that might mean I actually have to throw the kitchen sink. Okay, when it actually comes to helping with their sleep, I'd actually look at like something like like a melatonin and a B6 combo. Actually, they work really, really well in conjunction. So a melatonin, like a liquid melatonin, and a P5P, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Yeah, okay. Biotics Research do a really good B6 melatonin combo. You only need one tablet, because essentially that's where the issue lies. Yeah, okay. Because the person's not producing sufficient amounts of melatonin. Yeah, okay. And I would just throw the kitchen sink at that. Okay. Avoid things like blue light. Okay, like before they're going to bed, looking at decreasing screen time. Okay, so whether that's things like blue blockers, but I may also include things like valerian tea. Once again, I tend to just throw everything at it, because that's what you got to improve. You just actually got to improve the quality of your sleep. Okay, and one last question. Okay, is how can I lower cortisol? Okay, to actually help with aspects of like losing like abdominal fat. Well, that's alive in itself, okay? But I'm just gonna say like one big thing is just magnesium, yeah, okay? Like you've got the magnesium cortisol cycle, yeah, okay? Unfortunately, and they know this through sports research, that you know, one hard training session will deplete your serum magnesium levels tenfold, yeah, okay? So cortisol depletes magnesium quite rapidly, okay? But you need magnesium to help you dampen cortisol, yeah, okay? There's things like phosphatidylserine, okay? That is amazing for blocking cortisol, yeah, okay? They actually use that through soy lecithin, yeah, okay? It's not my preferred, because actually it really used to come from like bovine, okay? They actually used to get phosphatidylserine from basically brains, yeah, okay? A lot of people aren't going to like what I say, but I don't like with this aspect. But it's just the truth, yeah, okay? If you actually want to get good concentrations of phosphatidylserine, okay? Well, phosphatidylserine you can get through eating brains, okay? That's one of the highest sources of phosphatidylserine. A lot of people are going to go, this guy's crazy, okay? I'm just being honest, yeah, okay? Like things like lamb's brains, you know, I'm a big advocate of people eating more organ meats, yeah, okay? Once again, the quality could be an issue there, okay? But, you know, if it's organic, it's coming from the right source, okay? Yeah, phosphatidylserine is amazing for blocking cortisol. And then magnesium, okay? And you might just, yes, magnesium glycinate, magnesium taurate, and sometimes you might just need to be getting magnesium through your eyeballs, through your skin, just get it in any way you can, yeah, okay? But that would be, look, there's other things to help with cortisol there, but I'm going to go with like phosphatidylserine and magnesium, but there's definitely other tools, yeah, okay? Lots of love to everyone, yeah, okay? You know, like if you want help, reach out, okay? Say this all the time, love people, just want to help them, that's all I want to do. And maybe go down the butcher's and ask for some lamb's brains, yeah, okay? Tell them I sent you, yeah? Lots of love, guys. Take care.